There is a certain type of person who never raises their voice, never openly insults anyone, never creates obvious conflict. Yet somehow, every interaction with them leaves you emotionally exhausted. You begin questioning yourself around them, overanalyzing your words, feeling tension you cannot explain, because fake niceness creates psychological dissonance. Their words sound warm, but their energy feels cold, and human beings can sense that contradiction instinctively. The truth is, many people are not kind because they are emotionally healthy. They are kind because they are terrified of rejection, terrified of conflict, terrified of being disliked, so they build entire personalities around pleasing others. But when authenticity is buried long enough, resentment begins growing underneath the surface, and eventually the mask starts to crack. Tonight, we explore the hidden psychology behind people who pretend to be nice, and the darkness they often hide, even from themselves. Most people are not afraid of cruel people. Cruel people are easy to identify. The ones you should fear are the people who hide their darkness behind kindness, the ones who smile while quietly resenting you, who praise you in public but compete with you in silence, who act supportive, yet somehow leave you feeling smaller every time you walk away from them, because fake kindness is not always manipulation in the obvious sense. Sometimes it is something much darker, a survival strategy, a mask built from fear. And the terrifying part is this: many people who pretend to be nice do not even realize they are doing it. They have spent so much of their life suppressing anger, envy, insecurity, and disappointment that their personality itself became a performance. Carl Jung once said that what people refuse to confront within themselves eventually controls them from the shadows. And nowhere is that more visible than in people who cannot stop pretending to be good. You have probably met someone like this before. Maybe it was a friend who never disagreed with you directly, but subtly undermined you later. Maybe it was a coworker who acted warm and polite while quietly hoping for your failure. Maybe it was someone you loved, someone who said all the right words. But something always felt emotionally off, because genuine kindness has warmth. Fake kindness has tension. Real kindness feels free. Fake kindness feels calculated, and the human nervous system notices the difference long before the conscious mind does. That is why some people leave you emotionally exhausted even when they were technically nice the entire time. Your body can sense when someone's smile is disconnected from their soul. The psychology behind this behavior runs deeper than most people understand. Most fake niceness does not begin with evil intentions. It begins with fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of being disliked, fear of not being enough. Some people learn very early in life that authenticity is dangerous. As children, they may have discovered that expressing anger led to punishment, expressing needs led to shame, expressing individuality led to isolation. So they adapted. They became agreeable, polite, easygoing, emotionally accommodating, not because it reflected who they truly were, but because it kept them emotionally safe. Over time, this adaptation becomes identity, and eventually they no longer know who they are underneath the performance. This is why some people spend years being nice while secretly becoming bitter inside. Because when someone constantly suppresses their real emotions for social approval, the unexpressed parts of themselves do not disappear. They decay internally, then transform into resentment. You see it everywhere. The friend who always says it's fine until one day they explode over something small. The partner who avoids conflict for years while slowly losing respect. The employee who smiles at everyone but secretly hates their own life. The people pleaser who becomes emotionally manipulative without realizing it, because suppressed truth always leaks out somehow. Always. Sometimes through passive aggression, sometimes through guilt, sometimes through emotional withdrawal, sometimes through subtle sabotage. A person who cannot express honest emotions directly will often express them indirectly. That is one of the darkest realities of human behavior. The most dangerous anger is not loud anger. It is silent resentment hidden beneath politeness. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He believed that weakness often disguises itself as morality. not because morality itself is weak, but because some people weaponize goodness to avoid confronting their own fear. Think about how many people appear nice simply because they lack the courage to be honest. They do not say what they truly think. They avoid difficult conversations. They suppress boundaries. They fake agreement. They avoid directness because they are terrified of discomfort. But eventually, all of that emotional dishonesty accumulates pressure internally, and pressure always seeks release. That is why some of the nicest looking people can become shockingly cruel under stress, because beneath the surface was years of repressed frustration waiting to erupt. And when it finally does, people around them become confused. I thought they were such a good person. No, they were a controlled person. There is a difference. A truly kind person is not kind because they are incapable of darkness. They are kind because they understand their darkness and choose not to act from it. That distinction matters. A man who has never confronted his anger is not peaceful. He is merely untested. A woman who never expresses boundaries is not necessarily compassionate. She may simply fear abandonment. Real emotional maturity requires integration. Jung called this shadow integration, the process of acknowledging the parts of yourself you would rather deny: envy, aggression, selfishness, jealousy, power, pride. Not to become consumed by them, but to stop unconsciously projecting them onto others. People who pretend to be nice are often at war with their own shadow. They desperately want to be perceived as good because they are terrified of what exists underneath. So they construct an identity around harmlessness. But harmlessness is not virtue. A person incapable of honesty eventually becomes emotionally dangerous in subtle ways, because honesty creates clarity. Pretending creates distortion. And distorted people distort relationships around them. You can feel this in conversations. You ask them what they really want. They say, "Whatever you want is fine." You ask if something bothered them. "No, not at all." But the energy changes. The silence becomes heavy. The eye contact disappears. The warmth feels forced. You start walking on eggshells without knowing why. This is how emotional confusion begins. Not through obvious abuse, but through chronic inauthenticity. One of the most psychologically exhausting experiences in life is interacting with someone whose words and emotions do not match, because the human brain constantly searches for coherence. When someone smiles while secretly resenting you, your nervous system detects contradiction, and contradiction creates anxiety. This is why children raised by emotionally dishonest parents often grow up deeply confused about relationships. A parent may say, "I love you," while radiating disappointment. May say, "I'm proud of you," while emotionally controlling every decision. May act kind in public, but cold in private. The child learns a devastating lesson. People's words cannot be trusted. Only emotional subtext matters. And many adults carry this confusion into every future relationship. They become hypervigilant, emotionally anxious, overly analytical, because they learned that kindness can hide hostility. And sometimes it does. But there is another layer to this psychology that few people talk about. Some people pretend to be nice because they secretly crave power, not dominance in the obvious sense. Social power, emotional leverage, control through approval. These individuals discovered that appearing generous, supportive, or selfless makes people trust them. And trust creates access. Access to emotions. Access to vulnerabilities. Access to social influence. But because their kindness is transactional rather than genuine, it eventually turns manipulative. You see this when someone constantly helps others, but later weaponizes guilt. "After everything I've done for you," that sentence reveals the hidden contract. True kindness gives freely. Performative kindness keeps receipts. And this is where many people become trapped emotionally. They mistake compliance for goodness. But compliance is often rooted in fear. A truly authentic person is capable of saying no, capable of disappointing others, capable of honesty, capable of uncomfortable truth. Someone who always appears agreeable often has a hidden emotional cost accumulating somewhere beneath the surface. And eventually, someone pays for it, usually the people closest to them. because the more a person suppresses authenticity publicly, the more likely they are to release frustration privately. That is why some of the most publicly nice individuals become emotionally cold behind closed doors. The performance consumes all their emotional energy. There is nothing left afterward. Schopenhauer once wrote that every person takes the limits of their own vision as the limits of the world. People who pretend to be nice often genuinely believe they are morally superior because they avoid open conflict. But avoiding conflict is not the same as resolving conflict. Silence can become its own form of manipulation, especially when honesty is withheld to maintain control over perception. Some people would rather preserve the image of being kind than tell the truth, even when the truth would free everyone involved. And this creates emotional prisons, relationships where nobody says what they truly feel, friendships built on politeness instead of trust, families drowning in unspoken resentment, everyone smiling, nobody honest. You can almost feel the emotional suffocation, a dinner table filled with polite conversation, while tension silently moves underneath every word. A couple saying, "We're fine," while emotionally drifting apart for years. A friend group built entirely on avoiding uncomfortable truth. Modern society rewards this performance more than people realize. People are often conditioned to optimize likability over authenticity. Be agreeable. Be easy. Do not upset anyone. Do not say the wrong thing. Do not reveal too much. Keep smiling. But a personality built entirely around external approval eventually becomes psychologically fragmented because the real self remains buried underneath social adaptation. And buried emotions do not stay buried forever. They emerge through anxiety, depression, passive aggression, emotional numbness, sudden rage, secret addictions, self-destruction. The soul always demands honesty eventually, even if the ego resists it. There is a reason emotionally authentic people often feel intimidating, not because they are cruel, but because they are real. Real people force others to confront their own performance. A person who calmly speaks truth without excessive apology unsettles people who spent their whole life hiding behind politeness, especially in a culture addicted to performance. And that is why authenticity often attracts both admiration and hostility simultaneously, because deeply authentic people expose the emotional dishonesty around them without even trying. Think about the rare moments when someone tells you the truth directly but respectfully. No manipulation, no performance, no emotional games, just honesty. It feels almost shocking because honesty has become rare. Most people are managing impressions, not expressing truth. Even on social media, entire personalities are manufactured from selective emotion. Everyone appears emotionally healthy, confident, balanced, supportive. Meanwhile, loneliness quietly grows underneath the surface of modern life. People know how to appear connected, but many have forgotten how to be emotionally real. And the more disconnected people become from themselves, the more performative their kindness becomes, because genuine connection requires vulnerability. And vulnerability terrifies people who built their identity around being liked. So instead, they become emotionally edited versions of themselves, safe, polished, pleasant, but emotionally distant. The tragedy is that many fake nice people are deeply lonely, not because nobody loves them, but because nobody truly knows them. How can someone feel fully loved when the personality receiving the love is partially a mask? That creates a silent existential pain, the feeling of constantly being emotionally unseen while simultaneously hiding yourself from others. And over time, this creates internal emptiness. Some people eventually become resentful toward the very people they tried so hard to please. Because self-betrayal always creates psychological tension. Imagine constantly saying yes when you mean no, constantly smiling when exhausted, constantly suppressing irritation to avoid rejection. Eventually, the mind begins asking a dangerous question. If nobody sees the real me, does the real me even exist anymore? That question destroys many people internally. And this is why shadow psychology matters. Not because humans are evil, but because denied emotions become unconscious forces. The person who denies anger becomes passive-aggressive. The person who denies selfishness becomes secretly manipulative. The person who denies envy becomes quietly resentful. The person who denies insecurity becomes addicted to validation. What you refuse to acknowledge controls you indirectly, always. The strongest people are not the ones who appear perfect. They are the ones willing to confront uncomfortable truths within themselves. Stoicism was never about emotional suppression the way modern culture often portrays it. Real stoicism is emotional responsibility, not pretending, not performing, not hiding behind fake calmness. It means understanding your emotions deeply enough that they no longer unconsciously control your behavior. There is enormous power in becoming psychologically honest with yourself, admitting, I am angry, I feel envy, I feel rejected, I want validation, I fear abandonment, because once emotions are acknowledged consciously, they lose some of their hidden control. But when emotions are denied in order to maintain an image of goodness, they gain power in the dark. And darkness that remains unconscious eventually leaks into relationships, sometimes softly, sometimes violently. One of the saddest things in life is watching someone destroy relationships because they spent years pretending instead of communicating. You see it in marriages. One person avoids conflict endlessly to keep peace. Years pass, distance grows, resentment accumulates silently. Then suddenly one day, I'm unhappy. I don't love you anymore. I need space. And the other person feels blindsided. But emotionally, the relationship ended long before the words were spoken. Silence killed it slowly. Honesty could have saved it earlier. This happens in friendships too. Some people never express discomfort directly. Instead, they slowly withdraw, become colder, more sarcastic, less available, until eventually the connection dies under the weight of unspoken truth. And what is frightening is how socially normalized this behavior has become. Many people no longer know how to communicate honestly without guilt, because modern identity is often built around perception management. Being perceived as good matters more than being emotionally integrated. But integrated people are different. They can say, I care about you, but I disagree. I love you, but this hurt me. I want peace, but I also need boundaries. That balance is maturity, not blind niceness, not emotional suppression. Real maturity contains both kindness and strength, compassion and clarity, warmth and boundaries, the ability to be gentle without becoming fake, because a person who cannot access healthy aggression cannot fully protect their values, and eventually, people without boundaries become resentful toward the people they failed to confront honestly. That resentment slowly poisons the soul. You can see it in the eyes sometimes. People smiling while emotionally exhausted from carrying years of unspoken truth. People trapped inside personalities they created for survival. And perhaps the darkest part of all this, society often rewards the performance. The fake nice employee gets promoted because they avoid tension. The emotionally dishonest friend remains socially accepted because they never challenge anyone. The passive partner appears easy to love because they suppress their real needs. Meanwhile, authentic people are sometimes labeled difficult simply because they value truth over comfort. But truth creates real connection. Performance creates fragile connection, and fragile connection eventually collapses under pressure. Always. The deeper you study human behavior, the more you realize that authenticity is rare because authenticity requires courage. It takes courage to disappoint people, courage to risk rejection, courage to express needs, courage to establish boundaries, courage to reveal imperfection. Pretending to be nice is often easier socially, at least temporarily, but psychologically, it comes at a devastating cost. You lose connection with yourself, and once a person becomes disconnected from themselves, they often become emotionally numb toward others too. Because you cannot offer genuine connection while hiding your real emotional world constantly. You can offer politeness, you can offer performance, but not true intimacy. True intimacy only exists where truth exists. That applies to friendship, love, family, even self-respect. There is a reason many emotionally mature people become quieter as they grow older. Not because they stopped caring, but because they stopped performing. They no longer need to appear endlessly agreeable to feel valuable. They become more selective, more honest, more calm. And paradoxically, this often makes them kinder than before. Because real kindness is not driven by fear anymore. It is chosen consciously. A person who understands their darkness becomes capable of genuine compassion because they no longer need to pretend to be perfect. They understand human weakness intimately, their own included. That creates humility. And humility creates authentic warmth, not performative niceness. Authentic warmth feels different. It does not pressure you emotionally. It does not manipulate through guilt. It does not hide resentment behind politeness. It feels stable, safe, clear. There is honesty in it. And perhaps that is what so many people secretly crave today. Not endless positivity, not artificial politeness, not curated personalities, just emotional truth. Someone whose words match their energy. Someone whose kindness feels grounded rather than strategic. Someone capable of both honesty and compassion simultaneously, because those people are rare. And when you finally meet someone emotionally real after years of interacting with performances, you feel it immediately. Your nervous system relaxes. You stop overanalyzing every word. You stop scanning for hidden meaning. You stop feeling emotionally confused because authenticity creates psychological safety, not perfection, truth. In the end, the psychology of people who pretend to be nice is not just about deception. It is about fear. Fear wearing the mask of politeness. Fear becoming personality. Fear disconnecting people from their own emotional reality. And maybe that is the real lesson hidden underneath all of this. The opposite of cruelty is not niceness. The opposite of cruelty is honesty with compassion, because fake kindness can wound people quietly for years. But honest kindness heals, not because it always feels comfortable, but because it is real. And in a world filled with performance, emotional masks, and silent resentment, realness has become almost sacred. So the next time someone smiles at you, pay attention not only to their words, but to their emotional presence. Notice whether their kindness feels free or forced, whether their warmth feels grounded or rehearsed, whether they can tell uncomfortable truths without losing their humanity. Because the people who are truly safe to be around are not the ones pretending to have no darkness. They are the ones who faced their darkness honestly and learned how not to let it control them.